Hi guys, I'm Emily Sedona, and by the time you're watching this, I have hit my 3-year sobriety mark. My last day that I ever had alcohol was July 4th, 2020, and it is about to be the 5th of July, 2023, so 3 full years, and it has been a crazy ride. I feel like this is something that I used to speak on a little bit more. It hasn't been very prevalent in my life lately, but I did feel called to kind of share my story because I feel like I've never really done that from beginning to end, in hopes that my story can help someone who is feeling a little bit hopeless in their sobriety journey, because I know for a fact that it was so embedded in my persona that I never thought I would get sober. I never wanted to get sober. So I just figured I would start from the beginning, kind of tell you guys how my sobriety came to be. I want to put a really big trigger warning on all of this for substance abuse, alcohol abuse. It's kind of one of those things where, you know, when you're doing social media as a full-time job, you don't know if you want to share all of this, but I've always kept it real with you guys. So even though this might not shed a great light on me, it's part of my history and part of how I came to be who I am today. I really feel like this will help someone. So buckle up. Here we go. I started drinking from a very young age. I want to say the first time I ever got drunk was 14. I was the type of person who knew, like, very early on, from watching, you know, Paris Hilton and watching like all like the 2000s girls partying, going to clubs and like tabloids and stuff like that. Like, I wanted to be a party girl. I wanted that to be my identity. So I really fell into that. I think my drinking picked up the heaviest around 16 when I got my own license and I was kind of able to drive myself around. You know, at this rate, I'm stealing bottles of alcohol from my mom's liquor cabinet. I'm filling her bottles back up with water. I almost always have like a water bottle of alcohol in my car. I would have a bonfire with my friends and we would all share like one water bottle of booze, and it was once every weekend, once every other weekend, you know, nothing too crazy. And that kind of kept up for 2 years until I turned 18. And when I turned 18, the wheels kind of started to fall off. When I turned 18, alcohol was part of everything I was doing. I'm a senior, I have senior privileges, so I'm allowed to leave in the middle of the day. I go to Dunkin' Donuts, I'm getting like coladas, which are like slushies if you're not from the East Coast, pouring a quarter of it out, filling it up with vodka, and then going back into school. I'm throwing parties at my house every single time my mom was away. And there were just so many people at my mom's house, like all the time. And I think it was really hard because I took full advantage of the fact that like it was just my mom in that house and there was really nothing she could do. I put my mom through hell senior year. It was really tough. I'm throwing parties all the time, breaking stuff around the house, trashing the house. You see these kids in movies and they're cleaning the house up before mom gets home. In reality, I was so hungover that the house never got cleaned up, and I was so messed up all the time that I didn't really care that it was messed up. I would take my punishment and then just like carry on with my life. At this point in my life, I'm solidifying my persona as like a party girl, right? So all of my pictures on Instagram are just of me drinking, smoking cigarettes, like doing all this crazy shit. And like, I distinctly remember one girl that was always not very nice to me in high school. She literally commented on one of my pictures and was like, "We get it, you drink." And I'll never forget that because it hurt my feelings so much at that time. It really stuck with me. That's from when I was 18 and I'm 27 right now. So it has stuck with me my whole life since she commented that. Because I think deep down I knew that that was all I had. Like, that was the only reason why all these people were hanging around me. Like, we weren't really friends. We had nothing in common other than the fact that, like, we were just getting hammered underage and needed a place to go. And, like, at this rate, I have a pretty solid friendship with this overage guy who, if you're 25 and you're buying 17 and 18-year-olds booze and asking to come to their parties, you're creepy. But I didn't care because I just wanted the booze at the time. So we would pay him every Friday and like go pick up handles of alcohol, because at this point it's handles. So I would get a handle, my friends would all get their own handles, like stuff like that. And I would get a new handle like every single weekend. I graduate, on a prayer, barely graduate, almost had to stay back. I had to take a summer astronomy class, which was absolute hell. And the thing is I live in this upper middle class, close-knit hometown where gossip was just like the thing to do. So parents are gossiping about me. Parents aren't letting their kids hang out with me because they're afraid they're going to drink, which obviously they were going to drink. At one point, my family started getting these anonymous letters from these people that called themselves the association. And they would send these letters, which were just envelopes full of my printed out tweets and pictures of me like drinking with my friends. And they would send them to my mom. They got our address. What was my mom going to do? My mom was more disturbed that someone was like sending these letters to her home address. The scariest day was when they like made a big box and sent it to my dad and made it look like there were like other things in there so they would open it. And then one of them had like a return address from my mom's company on it. Just like really scary things. I remember one of them had like this threatening letter in it that said the drugs and orgies need to stop or the police are going to get involved. And they spelled orgies wrong. So if you're going to threaten me, at least learn how to spell. So that kind of all stopped once I got to college. And I heard rumors that the association also sent these letters to like the administration of the school, but I never knew that for certain. But I did know that a lot of the faculty at the school like knew exactly what was going on with me. Honestly, I just did not really care. I go to college and it's kind of the same thing, like drinking on the weekends. I am blacking out every weekend, but it's not really happening during the weekdays. But almost every single time I'm drinking, I'm blacking out.
And I forgot the most important part of my college story. So my sophomore year, I was long distance dating this guy. He would give me Xanax pills to push, would eat all of the Xanax pills. So I developed this like Xanax problem, and every week we would go through the same rigmarole. And I had just gone through like a really bad breakup, so I was just looking to sleep all the time. I was sleeping like every single day and then still going out on the weekends with my friends and drinking. And if you know, that is like a one-way ticket to blackout town. Like, don't ever drink and take Xanax at the same time. It's super dangerous. And I'm living in the dorms with my best friend, Alana. One morning she came home and I had gone back to our dorm that night, and she walked in and the door was propped open all night. I'm passed out in my bed, and at some point I had crawled into her bed and peed in her bed, not on purpose, obviously. So after that, she essentially was like, if you don't stop, I'm gonna call your mom, and I'm gonna have to tell your mom. And so that was like a huge wake-up call for me. I never did Xanax ever again after that, and I'm very thankful for Alana for kind of keeping me in check during that time. She's still my best friend to this day. And I do feel very grateful. So I just wanted to share that story because Alana is a big part of my sobriety journey, and I feel like I owe her a lot. She's probably like one of the people that's the happiest that I don't drink anymore.
So after 2 years of that, I drop out of college and I move home. That's when I start doing a little bit of my road tripping. I go on my first road trip with my sister. It was very eye-opening. So when we come back from the trip, I turned 21. And so now I can buy all my own booze and I can go out to bars. And going out to bars and going out clubbing was really, really fun for me. And that kind of also solidified that like party girl persona that I craved so bad. And now I can dress up for a club and I can go out. And I live in New Hampshire, so there's really not that many clubs in New Hampshire, but I still like love going out for a fancy cocktail with my girlfriends, things like that. Like, I really enjoyed that. And again, still blacking out almost every single time, but mainly on the weekends. I'm working full time at a sandwich shop at this point, holding my shit together, going in hungover very often, but still like keeping it together. I decide one day that I'm gonna move to Oregon. This would be where the shit hits the fan. So I decide I want to move to Oregon. I've always really, really, really wanted to be in the EDM scene. There's zero of that in New Hampshire, very little of that in New England at all. So I decide that I want to be in the EDM scene. I decide I want to go to the Pacific Northwest. I moved to Eugene, Oregon. My sister is also moving to Eugene, Oregon because she's going to be a freshman at the University of Oregon. So we live in the same town. So I move there and I don't realize that I do not have the ability to make friends outside of drinking at all. So I'm living in this shitty little apartment that I have subleased, and I am walking to the college bars every single day and getting absolutely hammered out of my mind, blackout, and just like hanging out with the bartenders, hanging out with whoever I could find, going back to random people's apartments, hanging out with them. It was just totally, totally crazy. And looking back, it was really, really unsafe, but it would get worse. So I moved to Oregon with $400 to my name, which is not going to get me very far. So I start working at Goodwill. I'm working 40 hours a week at Goodwill. At this rate, I had moved into a new house with a bunch of roommates that I just found off of Craigslist. And I really am just bored. I don't want to be working at Goodwill. I have no money. I have no free time. I came to the Pacific Northwest to adventure. So one day I drink an entire bottle of wine, drive myself to the strip club, and audition. And of course, they hire me on the spot. My first night is the next night. I make a bunch of money and I say, hey, this is the best thing that has ever happened to me. I text my boss at Goodwill and I tell her that I have a family emergency and I am moving back to the East Coast and I will not be coming in for my Goodwill shift ever. And now I'm stripping. After a couple months of stripping, I am able to rent my own house by myself, which was really, really fun. And I loved being able to kind of decorate, and it gave me a lot of freedom. Like, I have all this cash and I'm getting paid to drink, which was the best part. I was getting paid to party every single night. And I remember at one point there was like a tipping scale that happened when it was like, first I was making a bunch of money and I was drinking very little, and that started to go up. So at the strip club that I worked at, you were allowed to have 3 drinks, and after that you weren't allowed to drive home. And obviously I had my little Corolla at the time, and I would drive. I didn't live that far from the strip club, but I would drive my Corolla to work, and I wanted to be able to drive home and not give up my keys. So I would buy those little cardboard bottles of wine, and I would buy like a 4-pack of those. The whole time I'm getting ready for work, I usually would have like champagne or a mimosa at my house. And then I would go to work, and when I got there, I would take one of those cardboard bottles into the bathroom in my purse. I would pound the entire thing as fast as I could, and then I would pick up the like tampon dispenser. There would be like paper bags, and I would put it underneath there so that no one would find it until the end of the night, and no one would be able to figure out that it was like me. That's happening for like 2 years probably. And like in between that, I started dating this guy that I met at the strip club, and that's when my cocaine use started. So I started using a lot of Molly, a lot of cocaine. I'm doing cocaine every single night at this point. It was kind of like me always trying to find that perfect level of drunk, but when I would get too drunk, I would use cocaine to kind of wake me back up. Because I'm focused so much on drinking, I'm really just there to drink, and I stopped caring about talking to customers. So for the last like 6 or 8 months that I worked at the strip club, I was late on rent every single month. So every single month I would have a 72-hour notice for eviction on my door, and I would have 72 hours to come up with my rent. So, you know, I'm working every day at the club. I wouldn't really drink and drive. So my car, I would drive to work, and my car would like sit there for days because I would Uber home, and then I would just Uber to the club for my shift the next night. And then I would drink too much, so I would have to Uber home. And then I would Uber to the club, and my car would stay there for so long, like such long periods of time. I remember one of the bouncers joked that was Kylie's spot. Kylie was my dancer name. I was barely talking to my family at the time because I would be up for like 24 hours at a time. And sometimes I would call my mom, and I would be all kinds of fucked up and being weird and like saying all this weird shit. Like, I even just cringe thinking about the conversations that we had. I was just acting really insane. And as someone with mental illness, I think that like drugs and alcohol just like escalate any spiral that you're already having. So I'm like freaking out all the time, have no money. I am not paying any of my bills. So I got my trash cans repoed because I didn't pay my trash bill, and they kept giving me paper notices. So they literally took my cans away. And one year for Christmas, my mom actually got me a trash service, like 3 months of trash service, because she found the paper notices when she came to visit me. And then my boyfriend went on vacation and like never came back. And I'm very grateful for that because he was really shitty. So the best thing he ever did was just like ghost me. I really fell into this crazy deep depression, and I'm using all of these substances in tandem constantly. And so my mom actually sent my sister over for a welfare check one day, and I was like hearing voices. Like I was hearing shit and I was seeing shit. And I remembered like the walls were waving and my sister was there, and my sister's 3 years younger than me and just like does not deal with this, and she shouldn't have to. And she was like, I'm fucking leaving. You're freaking me out. My sister tells my mom about this whole hallucinating ordeal at my house. And my mom calls me and is like, pack your shit. I'm coming to get you. Mom flew home, packed my apartment up for me, my whole house, and drives me and my dog back to New Hampshire. It would be 6 months before I got fully sober, and in between that, like multiple specialized therapists and programs, and like I honestly can say that I fully got sober on my own. Like I wasn't seeing anybody at the time when I decided to stop drinking. I kind of just like hunkered down at my mom's house, and this was during COVID, right? There wasn't really anywhere that I could go. Nothing was really open. So I just kind of stayed at home and, you know, read my AA book, and for like 7 months just like only hung out with my mom. Detoxing off of alcohol is one of the hardest and scariest things that you can probably do on your own. Even looking back now, when I talk to my mom about it, she says that I probably should have been in a hospital. I was hallucinating. I was really, really sick. I was just crying and crying and crying all the time. Another thing that we really had to work through was I had years at this point where I had not interacted with anyone outside of my immediate family when I was sober. So I go to the grocery store and I have a panic attack. So I'm having these panic attacks every time I'm going out in public. I have extreme paranoia. I literally think people in the checkout line at the grocery store are talking about me. And that's my own cross to bear because that's something that goes on in my brain to this day. My mom is just my rock for all of this. And I would probably be dead if my mom hadn't gone to Oregon and fetched me and brought me home. She totally supported me because when I moved home, didn't have a job. It was COVID, couldn't get a job. She let me live at her house rent-free, which I am so, so grateful for. She packed up my entire apartment. She never judged me. She never made me feel bad. I really, truly feel like I owe my mom my entire life and that I would not be sober without her. At the end of the day, I just decided that I was so sick of it. Like, I was so sick of the hangovers. I was so sick of being surrounded by people that did not give a fuck about me. I was so sick of not knowing what I had said or done the night before and having all of that, like, hangover anxiety mixed with real anxiety because you know you did something stupid. I was so just tired of everything being so surface level and patched together at that rate. I wanted a real life and I wanted some meaning to my life and I wanted to just dig a little bit deeper. And so what they don't tell you about getting sober is it's going to be good and then it's going to be really, really bad. And it's going to be so hard. And the reason why people start drinking again is because the floods of emotions that you have pushed off for years with substances comes all back. And it is so raw and it is something tormenting that you have never, ever experienced in your entire life. And that is why people will say, I can't deal with this. I need to drink again. I had 100 days sober before and I did the same thing. I had one stressful day, couldn't handle it, started drinking again. This was my second attempt at sobriety. I've stuck with it. This will be my third year. I'm really, really proud. I really think that you cannot get sober in the same environment that you were using in. Like if you're a bartender, I think it would be really, really hard to get sober in the bar scene. I think that for me now, I probably could go work at a bar. I probably could dance again if I wanted to. Like I could do all that because I have a strong foundation, but I just really think that it's really hard to get your feet off the ground when you're in that scenario. I also think that having a strong support system is really, really crucial, whether that be people you meet in AA, whether it be family members, whether it be other sober friends. But, you know, hanging out with all these other people that are using is not going to be helpful for you reaching your goals. It's a lot of peer pressure. And also, I think that being in an environment where substances are normalized is not going to help your case, because if you're sitting there saying, I don't want to do this, it's probably going to make your other friends that are using feel bad about themselves, and they're going to pressure you into using, because nobody wants to use alone. At least I personally was always the peer pressure, and I will admit that, like, I never wanted to drink alone because I never wanted anybody to see how bad I was getting. If they were as drunk as me, they weren't going to notice that I was like out of my mind. I also at this time like leaned very heavily into spirituality. This sounds crazy, but I really started just talking to my higher self, not necessarily like God, but like me and my soul, and having conversations out loud, and like writing her letters, asking for support, asking to keep me aligned on the path that like is truly, truly meant for me, and support me as best you can. All that. I guess it was kind of like a form of prayer. I think that AA can be a little daunting because there are a lot of like God references and stuff like that, which I think is what turned me off to it on my first go. I actually don't go to AA anymore. I have the AA handbook. I kind of went through all the 12 steps, and I think that as I kind of dug into my own beliefs, I have my own view on what sobriety means now. I myself personally am completely sober, but I think that like if I did like cannabis, I would probably utilize it. Again, as of right now, I am completely 100% sober and intend on staying that way. Those are just like my views and what I view as sobriety still. A lot of people don't agree with that, and that's okay. This is my story, and I don't care if you don't agree with that. I really want anybody out there to know that like there are so many support groups, and there are so many other sober people, and you will have to retrain your brain into having fun. And I highly suggest finding things that you can do by yourself, because the reason why you're drinking is because you don't want to sit alone with your thoughts. And I never did. And now I really enjoy sitting alone with my thoughts. I actually prefer to be alone with my thoughts rather than be with other people. And that just comes with time. And things are really, really painful when you first get sober. Really, really painful. And you have to just push through, because if you are seeking sobriety, the life that you dream of and a life that you want so bad is on the other side of it. You just have to keep alignment, and you have to just keep working at it. My body, mind, and soul has never felt better since I stopped drinking alcohol. I never, ever, ever thought that I would get sober. Ever. Like, I love drinking so much. Drinking was my first love. I found so much joy in it. I found so much fun in it. And when you stop drinking, you don't get that, like, high of having a drink and going to rip it up on the dance floor with your friends. Like, you don't get that. But over time, your brain will adjust, and like all the chemicals in your brain will start to balance over time, and you'll be able to find joy in like the smaller things. Like, I truly feel like I have a whole like new lease on life, so to say. And it sounds so cheesy, and I think that's a big part of why I stopped talking about it, because how many times am I going to say, oh, I feel so good, like I have a new life, getting sober is the best thing that ever happened to me? How many times can I say that before I sound cheesy? But at the end of the day, I wanted to have this video out. I don't have a video on my channel out of my journey. I think that it could really help some people. The thing for me is, when I stopped drinking, I became a totally new person. And I think that I am the person that I always was in my soul, but drinking was actually pulling like a wet blanket over that and dampening my personality down. And now that I've learned to be myself, and I'm comfortable with myself, and I'm comfortable with this life that I am building, everything feels so good and everything is falling into place. Chances are, if you're drinking or using any other substance, you're not putting yourself first. And once you start like nourishing your body and your soul, good things start happening and things will feel so much better. I hope that this helps somebody out there. I know what it's like to feel so alone and hopeless and in your darkest hour. And if you are watching this, maybe you are in your darkest hour and you typed in how to get sober on YouTube, because I was there, I did it, and I'm here 3 years later, and I'm here to tell you it's gonna get so much better. It's gonna get so much better. I promise. I love you so much. Thank you for watching, and thank you all for being here with me. It means the world. I love you.